Hey everyone, it's Adam, and I'm here with Sahlén and Johan Nohr from Stockholm Kartell. We're going to be talking about their game Cyborg. Why don't we start if you two could introduce yourselves and what your part of the game development was? Christian, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the writer and I'm the writer and designer of the game.
All right, so mostly like the rules and the setting and...
The rules. Obviously, the rules are based on Mörkborg, but were adapted to the cyberpunk setting. But yeah, the setting, the adaptation of the rules and everything that is new, rule wise or lore wise, I guess I made, or most of it, with the help of Johan, among others.
And then Johan?
And I'm Johan. I'm the graphic designer and artist. That was my main job on this. I did some minor editing and like brainstorming as well, but I was mostly in Photoshop and InDesign during this project.
We collaborated on almost everything in some way or another, me and Johan. So he made editing of my texts, and I told him what I thought about his pictures and gave him some vague art direction and so on as well. So
yeah.
So I mean, everything is a collaboration, and we just kept sending each other things.
And that's kind of the thing in like within Stockholm Kartell, which we belong to, that like collective that we're very like it's kind of an open working environment, I guess you could call it, where we're a bunch of very opinionated people that help out all each other's projects. So that actually helps.
Yeah, because I know like with our podcast, we're kind of the same way. Like we like to joke about it being a pirate democracy is what we call it. Except for no one has to walk the plank, I guess. I don't know.
Not yet.
Not yet. Eventually, maybe someone will. Yeah, I kind of wanted to start with where you each got your beginnings in RPGs. And I don't mean like necessarily in designing them, but I mean like being introduced into RPGs. Because in the States, there's kind of like the one answer everyone always says, you know, and so I'm just kind of curious where you guys started off with that.
In Sweden, we have our own D&D called Drakar och Demoner, which is released soon in English for the first time as Dragonbane by Free League. And of course, it didn't used to be published by Free League, but it's the game most Swedish people, at least of our generation or close to it, started with, if we started in Swedish. So for me, that was 3rd or 4th edition of Drakar och Demoner, which was in the mid-90s sometime. And Johan?
And for me, it was another game by that same company called Mutant, which is also around still in the form of Mutant Year Zero and Mutant Chronicles. It eventually, evolved into, and that was like a post-apocalyptic sort of tongue-in-cheek game with a very like, it was a world very close to our own, obviously, but with some tweaks to it and a lot of humor. But that's kind of interesting. Is that this thing? I mean, in the States, I guess most people have started with D&D, but is that like the full picture? Or?
No, that's not the full picture. Like, I think most people start there. Like for me, like that was where I started, was in Dungeons and Dragons and AD&D, like into 2nd edition, whatever. But from there, I kind of moved into some other games, like Twilight 2000 was one of the ones I played when I was younger. Shadowrun was another one I played when I was a kid. So, yeah, and there was like an older Aliens game I think I remember playing. There was a bunch of other ones. So I think everyone kind of starts in D&D at that time just because of how ubiquitous it was in the culture, But
sort of came to us later in a way. I mean, D&D was around in Sweden too, but I think both you and me, Christian, came to it. I mean, later on in the form of OSR. Or maybe you started earlier than the OSR was around, but.
Yeah, I started playing 2nd edition AD&D just by the end, I think, of 2nd edition's lifespan, like the final 2 years or something. But for sure, I mean, people in Sweden were playing Dungeons and Dragons as well. But I think when I started, there seemed to be like a huge divide between the Swedish role players who played Swedish games and the ones who played English games. And D&D had a bad reputation of being computer or console gaming wise, because you had levels, and Swedish role-playing games didn't have levels, and they didn't focus so much on combat maybe as it was perceived as Dungeons and Dragons did. And then there were the people who started with Dungeons and Dragons before Swedish role-playing games even existed, who of course thought that everyone who played Swedish language games were young kids who only wanted to power game or whatever. And
a lot of silly stuff going on, yeah.
A lot of really silly things that we are, I think, mostly past in the Swedish scene today. But there was a divide, and it all matters. Like, what game did you start with, or what language did you start playing it? Did you start with the Swedish one or the English one? And that mattered a lot.
It wasn't that long ago that I started playing or trying Dungeons and Dragons for the first time, when I was an adult, because I had avoided it for so long because of this reason, because I perceived it as a worse game in a way. And then I was like, but I have to check it out. And it was really fun. So it was it's so stupid, but yeah.
And then that's why I like that question, because it's always interesting to hear where people came from into the hobby, just because there's so many games. And I played a lot of role-playing games when I was younger, and then as I got into high school and then as a young adult, I kind of veered away from that for a while. And it wasn't until I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, I kind of got back into it with Pathfinder, which is very much the same kind of way, where it's rules heavy, very combat kind of focus. I mean, it doesn't have to be, and then it's just how people play the game.
Yeah.
And I've been recently trying to veer away from just combat heavy stuff and have it be more, role play, because I think that's more interesting.
I think Pathfinder was the reason that I got into more rules light games as well, because we played a campaign up to level 12 or something, when I realized, I have to do something completely different than this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I get that, and it's not to disparage any other games. It's just different people have different ways they want to play a game.
It just wasn't for me. No.
The Stockholm Kartell you guys were talking about, so it was kind of, like you said, more of a collective. So how many people kind of are involved in your coven, I guess was the term you used as a joke?
How many are there?
Are we 13 now?
Yeah, 13, 15, something like that. There are a lot of not secretive members, but very quiet members. And we mostly meet digitally in our Discord now. But I think, somewhere around that. And I think maybe it's 5 or 6 that are more public recently, the last couple of years, I guess. But it kind of started as just a group of friends who played games, and then lately we've been making them and had beers and stuff.
Yeah. So it basically started with beers for people who were into role-playing games, and then the Stockholm Kartell as a name and concept kind of existed before we even played games together. And of course, since we are so many and people, not everyone live in Stockholm, especially not anymore, we rarely play games together now even, but some of us do back and forth. But then, it was recently that we actually started to make games, and then started to make games together, because most of us started on our own corner and tried publishing or releasing something on our own. And I mean, that's half of us also, because the rest are just playing games and maybe writing about games or just reading a lot of them. And what we have in common now is that we like each other, and we like to talk about games, and we like to complain about games, I guess.
Yeah, we have the same battle jackets. That's basically it.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, so I mean that sounds very similar to I probably how a lot of the actual plays podcasts kind of start. It's these guys play together, and next thing you know, they're recording it. So yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So Cyborg was, like you said before, based off the Borg rules anyway, and uses that basic same the basic rule structure that it does, but with obvious additions. And I was kind of curious what the inception was, how that came into being, I guess, the idea, to do that in the first place for Cyborg.
It was late 2019, when I think I realized that it was soon to be 2020, and I felt that I really 100% had to run a cyberpunk game in the year 2020 to celebrate Cyberpunk 2020, or not celebrate, but to acknowledge the fact that we are now into we're now into the cyberpunk future the second time since they started with 2013 back in the day. But Cyberpunk 2020 was the first cyberpunk role-playing game I played, and I wanted to run something, and I started to look around at the rule sets that existed back then, in 4 years ago almost, and I couldn't find anything that really suited what I wanted, especially rules-wise. So, and then Johan and Pelle had recently just sent me the playtest document of Mörkborg. I ran the playtesting group for that with Kartell members, and just decided that, hey, maybe I can make something with this. This is it's so light, it's so easy. It shouldn't be difficult to adapt somehow. And I started writing it, and after a while, or designing it, I guess. And after a while, I realized, hey, maybe this is actually something that shouldn't just be lying in a text document on my computer for me to use for my campaign. Maybe I should just talk to Johan and Pelle and see if we can actually make this happen for real. And then it did. And the campaign I ran started I think the fall of 2020. And that was the playtest campaign for Cyborg. And we just kept on going from there. So that's how it came to be, I guess.
And you told me that we had to do it and that I had to be a part of it. And I said yes, and didn't realize at the time how much bigger this book would be than Mörkborg, because it's almost twice the size in terms of page count due to that many more tables and many more art pieces. So it just sort of grew from there.
Has it been like 3 times the art or something?
I guess, yeah. There's a ton of new art. I just couldn't stop once I started drawing, I guess. So
no, and it's a gorgeous book. I did notice that too when I got my physical copy. I was like, man, this is so much bigger than the Mörkborg.
It's thick, yeah.
Put them next to each other. It was like, that is a lot more content in there. No, I mean, you guys kind of answered the question I was thinking of before. I guess with the setting and the artwork and it being a collaborative process between the two and like handing it back and forth. What was your inspirations for kind of the tone and the feel and the artwork in general and the setting?
Just like with Mörkborg, it was a very musical project. So like music was a big source of inspiration for us. And there's an official playlist, and there is also a list of bands that sort of inspired us to do it. And I guess also there's a lot of movies and mangas and comics, video games, all that sort of stuff. But for me, at least, and I think music is the biggest inspiration. And that it was was to have another tone and another genre than the more usual cyberpunks, like not as much synthwave, but more like noise and industrial and hip hop and that sort of maybe harder or like angrier music.
Mm-hmm.
And because that fits with the whole vibe of the game as well. Like it's a much more grittier, sort of angrier kind of cyberpunk than a lot of others.
It's a very angry game, and I listen to a lot of angry music and a lot of noise and artsy and music that or anti-music or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that for a long time, but I felt like this is the time. It usually didn't really fit into my normal role playing. Of course, we could fit industrial and goth clubs into our late 90s game of Vampire, but
well, obviously
it didn't fit that well into Pathfinder, for example, to play some Merseburg to it. But this was like now all the industrial and power noise and harsh noise and everything, just let it flow out. But also, of course, I mean, there are I've been reading and playing and watching Cyberpunk, reading the comics and everything for a long time. So everything you know and love is somehow in there, probably in one way or another. Like I never played Shadowrun, the role playing game, but I really have fond memories of Shadowrun, the Super Nintendo game.
Right.
I really love it, and so that is an inspiration for Cyborg, for example. Yeah, there's so much.
And also, I think, like you mentioned before, Christian, your CV, like the the past work, it's and that's the same for me. Like the day jobs that we have, and the sort of just life in general, and the society. Basically, like doom scrolling for an hour, and you get tons of inspiration for a cyberpunk game, because we're living in this cyberpunk future right now, and you just have to tweak it a bit, like remove it a bit from the real world, and you have it. Like you can use it, and that's unfortunately good inspiration.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, like during the pandemic, like when everything was all shut down and everyone's in masks and stuff, I was out at a store, like just shopping for groceries, right? And there's a robot cleaning the aisle, right? Like mopping the floor, and we're all wearing masks. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen this movie in the 80s. So like, this is already, like, it's very prophetic.
It's happening right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we're totally living in those times now. Music thing. I was thinking of that because we're recording a playthrough right now of Cyborg for our show.
Oh, really?
Like we're like one session in. We did character creation and whatnot using the like the website you guys have for it for just the random character creation. I was like, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. Go make characters and let's move.
Short episode.
They're probably going to die anyway, so who cares? But yeah, so we're doing that right now. And one of the things they asked me was like what kind of tone I was going for, and I sent them a playlist. I was like, these bands, and it was like Skinny Puppy and Ministry and like Cam FDM, and I was like, this is what I'm going for.
Yeah.
So no, it definitely has that feel of music in it, like that. So yeah, so you guys kind of went back and forth with ideas. How did that work? Would you like hand off an idea for a setting, and then Johan would send an illustration, and just kind of went back and forth like that, or was it?
I mean, it all grew kind of organically. I started writing, and I had a picture of what I wanted to do, and then someone said, "Hey, we should just not just have technology in here. We should have some weird tech or alien stuff in here." Like, and then I guess that actually took some convincing. But when I just decided that, yeah, let's do something really weird and really body horror-y, and go with something. Let's call it nano-infections or nano-infestations or whatever, and let's see where I can take this. And I did that, and then Johan made some illustrations, and that, based on what I wrote, and then his illustration was entered into the text somehow in some ways, and so it's all back and forth, and it's for me almost impossible to figure out like who came up with what idea and when. I know that when we were reviewing back in the Kickstarter campaign, one of the stretch goals was to, of course, create the digital tools, but also to add more content to the digital tools. So the character creator online actually has a couple of results and powers and stuff that is not in the book. And when we were editing those, like 2 months after writing them, I had to ask Johan, like, hey, did you add this thing? Because I can't remember anymore.
No, I couldn't remember either. It just sort of appeared there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But it was also the same thing as with the Merc Body, that once I had added the text, I would make some art and some layout, and then ask Christian for, we need another table here, or we need some more. Can you make this D12 table a D20 instead? Because I need some more text, basically, to make it look nice. And so that's one way we could that we edited it. Or I would just make something up and just show Christian, like, oh, hey, what do you think about this? Or I would take his text and just add or tweak it, and we bounced it back and forth, or we post it in our internal like Stockholm Kartell Discord, and someone else would pop in and say, hey, what about this idea, or so it's a very fluid and very like dynamic process.
Mm-hmm.
I think you once told me that, hey, I added space and a headline here for food in the equipment section. So can you please fill out this table? And it's like, oh, okay. Like
it was like an empty space in the corner. Like, what do I put here?
Exactly. It's like, yeah. You have like 6 or 8 slots or whatever. You just make it happen.
Put some content here.
Exactly.
That's very telling of how we work. Actually, like it's we don't put like the text on the pedestal and have the design and art follow it. It's they're very evenly weighted,
like symbiotic kind of.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, it's cool. You kind of touched on something about the alien tech that I was interested in. That the whole G0 is that how it's like you're supposed to say just Z0?
G0 or G,
like ground zero, like
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's ground zero, absolutely.
Yeah, I was kind of curious just because it is left interestingly vague, which I think is really cool because then it can open up to anything at that point. And you said that was kind of like you had to be pushed in that direction, or
I had to be convinced to add the
magic.
Yeah, the magic, because I think that was how it was presented to me first. So, someone else from the cartel said, hey, you should add magic into this. And I was like, no, I don't want magic in my cyberpunk. If you want magic and elves and stuff, you just go play Shadowrun.
Right.
Then we had a discussion and someone started talking about like weird tech and
I think it was like demons at one point as well, and we said, no, hang on, that's Mutant Chronicles, like we don't want to do that. So
exactly, aliens who are actually demons, that's Mutant Chronicles, and it's cyberpunk with alien demons. But when we started talking about like Videodrome or that sort of like biotech kind of things where you don't actually know if it's organic or not, or if it's magic or not, or that sort of thing, and just adding any sufficiently enough the high tech blah 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 turns into magic thing. It's like, yeah, but let's go there. And my first instinct is often that I need to know what the background is or what the facts about something is before I start writing. But when I actually, it's like, no, it can be several things. Let's call it nano, because the first assumption or the first theory was that it's aliens riding nanomachines or alien bacteria riding nanomachines. That's what's causing all of these like mutations, basically. But let's also say it doesn't have to be that. It may be that, but it can also be something else completely. And it's leave it open, leave it ambiguous, leave it up to the group, because whatever I come up with there is probably going to be more boring or not fit you as a group. So let's let's keep it open. And also, I mean, not every D&D campaign is about what are the origins of magic. So I mean, you don't have to bother about what this is. No. You can just say it's here, and now you're trying to make some money to pay off your debt. The campaign is absolutely not about Ground Zero or G0 or Nano. It's just something that exists there, and you can just let it be there. You don't have to explain everything.
I mean, that can even be a thing in the game world, that people are, unsure of what it is. Maybe they have theories, conspiracy theories, or people just say that it doesn't exist. Like, as people do now with stuff. They just, so, and it can be, alien bacteria, as you mentioned, or it could be, maybe a corporation that has some sort of military tech experiment gone wrong, or gone exactly as planned. Who knows? And I think G0 is to like come back to your question, is that's the source of all this. Like there's an in-game event called the Incident, which is also left deliberately vague, where bad things started to happen, and the nano-infestation is said to like originate from that moment. And there was a big explosion. We mentioned that rocks fell from the sky, and the center of the city, whatever that used to be, is now just a post-apocalyptic wasteland, pretty much sealed by this high-tech wall defended by auto turrets. And that's a nice, I think, it's a nice adventure environment to have in the middle of the city. You have this mega dungeon, basically, or this wasteland that you can have. There's close proximity to adventure, and a place to maybe hide or run away from heat, or a place to go to search for treasure. So it's a neat little trick to have in the middle of a city.
Right. Yeah, and that was one of the things. The other thing I noticed when I was reading through was like what I think it was in the back, like where the monsters are, and there's like a saw creature, like with the woods, the forest outside, and they've all been chopped down and stuff like that. Like I kind of like that it was just also like, and there's outside here, but there's these things that are going to chop you up and kill you if you go out there.
Yeah, it's like industrialized foresting out there, and like agriculture, and you have to get your food and your supplies somewhere from. So I really like the whole like outside of the city thing. That's a thing in Cyberpunk, I think, that is I haven't seen used that much, and we barely touch upon it in the book as well, but. It's an interesting thing, I think, like what happens outside.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of like the new Blade Runner, where like they're that's like where it starts, is outside the city actually, and they're out past all the industrial farming and stuff like that. And there's just wasteland, nothing, But it kind of makes me think of that. So if you had to pick, like, and I know this is probably a terrible question, if you had to pick a area that's kind of your favorite part of the city of Psy, like what would be kind of the one that you like latch onto the most?
I hate all of them. So
I don't mean want to live there.
No, I get it.
I mean, I really like I really like all the water and what's going on. The fact that we added an island that we call the Arcs, with it's just a forest of arcologies, like the self-sufficient giant buildings, and right pretty much next to it on another island we have this place called Borghold, which is the ancient prison built upon a prison, built upon a prison, built upon a prison. So like stories say that there are medieval traces left of like the old castle dungeon somewhere underneath that prison still being used. And then also like close to that there is an entire really big underwater shopping mall entertainment mega complex being like under construction, and for me that's three very close proximity wise areas that are really different. You have all sorts of different adventure possibilities in those areas, because one of them is really high tech and urban, and the other one could be a mega dungeon in a fantasy game on the bottom levels, and then turn into, I guess, expedition on the barrier peaks on the top newly built layers. But also like having a construction site that may be partially open to the public as well underneath the water. I really like that, and just everything we did with the water and areas close to it is my favorite things.
Mm-hmm.
I think like submarine locations are especially interesting because of the constant threat of disaster that's in there. Like you can't, explosions and gunfire is usually a bad idea. It's like being in space, pretty much. Like you're surrounded by this water. I was like flipping through the book here to try to find what I like more, and I think one of my favorites is a kind of small entry. Is one of the in-betweens locations, which is pretty much the places where the salary folk live, like where the whatever the middle class is in this city lives. And it's the location Svarta, which means like, I don't know, blackness or darkness or something. Yeah. And because of how it was like gentrified, and there's a lot of pop-up cyber bike shops basically transforming the entire area, and the Roadrunner clans from outside of the city, this maybe Akira or Mad Max type people, they misunderstood this, or they saw this as like a threat, like a new gang coming up, and so they like bombed the whole area, which is an interesting, I think, dynamic when you have the city, the people in the city and the people who dwell outside of the city, they interact, and there's misunderstandings, and there's these fucking cyberbike hipsters didn't mean to start a biker war all of a sudden, but there you go. And I think that's because of how these like factions are vital to the way that we, I think, run campaigns in this game as well, because you have these power players and they interact with each other, and there's misunderstandings, and there's declarations of war and everything. So I like that.
That was one of the interesting things, because I was also I was using like the random mission generator for it, and it very much had that kind of feel to it, where it's like the different factions hiring somebody from over here to do something instead of necessarily the same people they always work for. Yeah, I really like that.
And it's always like someone else really wanting this, and you work for someone, you think, but they in turn work for someone else, and you help them, and whoever you helped 3 levels up, they might be in conflict with your partners or whatever. So there's a lot of possibility for intrigue, I think.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I like with the character creation. I really like the debt, for example, being like an important part of the character creation. It's like who you owe money to, and the more interesting part is less how much. It's like how bad do they want it part that I thought was really interesting, because I like the one where it's like, whatever, you can pay me back eventually, because I thought that was amusing.
Yeah, they all really, really want their money back. Like I think that's a driving force. Like you can earn all this money from missions, and there's all this tech that you might maybe want to buy, but there's someone who really wants that money, and who will like break your kneecaps if you don't pay it back. So it's a very I think money is a very central part of this game as well, because of how like if you die, there's a possibility that you can pay your way out of death. But then you have to use that money that you owe the kneecap breaking guys.
Right. So you're alive, just no kneecaps, and
Yeah, exactly. So there's like all this balance. Like, what do I do with the money that I have? Because it's very central to living inside.
And that was the other thing too. Is a lot like Merc Borg. The classes, I like how it's optional. Like in that system, like you don't have to use them, but you can, and you get these cool things if you do. But if you don't, like it's not necessary. Like as far as the classes go, was there anywhere specific that you kind of drew from, or like I was curious about some of them. They're kind of really neat ideas.
I think, basically they are archetypes from other modern or cyberpunk games. You have the heavy weapons guy, you have the melee guy, you have the hacker, you have the nano magician basically, and then you have the driver, and then you have the thief pretty much. So I think that's where it comes from. And it seemed like they should have some kind of speciality, but also this is basically just your starting class. And in most cases, it will only get you some better chances. It will get you some gear and maybe some ability to fit with that. But you can, of course, do whatever you want after you started. And especially if you get better a couple of times and then improve through the leveling system or whatever you want to call it, you may end up being actually worse on what you were good at in the beginning and better at something else. So it's just to get some flavor going and to get you some starting equipment, and then you can figure out your own way. And I guess it's kind of that's of course Merc Borg did that as well, but it's also what I wanted to do with this type of game. It's what a lot of my now favorite like digital games do with Dark Souls and everything like that. Your starting class is basically your starting stats and your equipment, but that's it. And after that, you can be whatever you want you to be, or whatever luck gives you. Because if you roll up a character and it's a Forsaken Gangoon, but you end up with both a cyber deck and a nano power anyway, and your stats show that you're really, really excellent in melee weapons or whatever, then just do whatever you want, and you can try to be everything as well.
Yeah, you're not locked into anything really,
and you may not survive for long anyway. So
no, it happens. I think they're also a great way of like inserting you into the setting. They give you a bunch of sparks to build from, to say like some contacts and some names and places maybe that connects you to the city and to the other players.
And also disconnects you, because you're a burned hacker, you're a Forsaken Gangoon, you're all abandoned and thrown out out of like ordinary society somehow. You're not a soldier, you're a discharged corpse soldier. So you're not working for the corpse anymore. So every class has a reason for you not to just go up and go to your 9 to 5 to pay your bills, because you're, for some reason or another, you are outside of that society part.
Yeah, and like you used to have something that you don't anymore. That's a good point. And that's sort of similar to like Mörkborg had this thing where you're all like shit, basically, like you're all terrible people. And in Cyborg, you're all like you lost something, or you're abandoned, or you're discarded somehow. So band of outcasts.
Yeah. We had out of the 4 PCs in our game so far, like 2 of them, when they randomly generated, both got like a robot dog. And then they started asking me like, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know, man, make it up. It's like it's, what does it mean by jailbroke? I'm like, I don't know, man, make it up. Like it's a jailbroke phone, man.
Yeah, exactly.
You tell me what it means.
and it only obeys you, whatever you means.
Right, exactly. And that I don't want to spoil anything before they listen, but like that comes up.
Oh, like, really?
That specific issue comes up at some point. So
that's nice. And I really liked how, because we added a few of these small little tidbits of text that doesn't really add anything like mechanically, but I'm really happy that you used that line, because that's I think the reason that we add these little things. Like some people might pick up on a line or two that's spread around the book. So yeah, nice.
Yeah, it was very much a like the players like, what does that mean because of this? And I was like, we'll find out, I guess. We'll see how this plays out. But so it really was kind of cool. But that kind of led me to my next question is because it's so open a lot of times with the intent, lines like that are just kind of like, what does it mean? Have you guys had a lot of experience getting other players to kind of think that way when they're playing? Just because a lot of times players have a tendency, if they're coming from some other game that's more rigid, to kind of, like, what does rule mean? Like, do you have any ideas on how to get people to do that a little bit more, I guess?
I think the basic, usually when I play with players, I play with players I know, and they know what to expect. And we also, playing with the cartel and talking with the cartel about games, because that's basically what we do most of our time, is that the Stockholm Kartell does not spend most of its time making games. We spend most of our time talking about games and playing games and talking about making games.
Complaining about games, yeah.
and complaining about games and learning that way, I think. So, in that scenario, most people know what to expect. But when I run games at cons and stuff, and it's new people, or I just play for new people, just having, most players are not used to, or most role players who have played role-playing games for a lot of times are not used to the game master or dungeon master or whatever asking the players questions other than what do you do, or how do you do it. But when you turn that around and say like, so you tell me, how does the metro system work in this city? How does this work? And turn their questions back to them. Some of them will think that, hey, this is weird. And then it's like, okay, maybe that's okay as well. Not everyone has to participate in this like that way in equal amounts if they don't want to, but just like turn the questions back to them and yes and that, or yes but, or no but, or no and, or whatever. But just let them be part of it, and most of them picks it up pretty quickly. And funnily enough, if you're playing with people who've never played role-playing games before, they will not think this is weird as well, and they will get it instantly because they and will just run with it. But for experienced role players who are not experiencing that type of role playing, it gets really like awkward and
what do you mean?
This is weird because you should know this. It's like, no, we're making it up together. And of course, I mean, we've been playing all sorts of games for a very long time now, and a lot of indie games and cooperative storytelling games and so on as well. And so we've tried all sorts of different versions, and it's good to mix.
Definitely.
So one of the questions I always like to ask people is, and this is to both of you individually, obviously, or unless it's the same story, so who knows, but what would be your favorite moment or event from an RPG session that you played? Like something that just stands out for some reason. And it could be for whatever reason, something that just stands out in your head.
Something that has happened, or just...
Like when you're actually playing, some kind of like, just there was this one time X person did blah, you know. I should have asked that beforehand so you guys had time to think about it.
I can start. I mean, there's been a couple. We had back when we were playing Pathfinder, we had this really fun one-shot thing where we basically had me as the player and I tried something really dangerous and it ended up with being like, okay, this can actually succeed. And we were looking up the rules and everything. It's like, you actually may kill this dragon with just one spell, but you need to pretty much roll 19 or above, and then 20, and then 18 or above on 3 separate rolls. And I did, and by that third dice roll, everyone was just standing at the table, going like, "Come on!" And we all know that like, if I fail this, I'm dead. It's over. I won't survive. And just that like cheering, and I mean, everyone at the table was cheering, and that like lucky thing and just like gambling thing was great. And then extra great was that my character died 20 minutes later. So that was like the epic.
Welcome back to reality.
Exactly. And it felt great. I mean, I've had that sort of like game mechanics excitement, I guess, but then there's also been great story moments, but those are gonna take a lot longer to explain and probably won't be as fun. But I like when randomness or and luck and chance make things interesting. Like also when you're role playing and you say something by mistake. Because you're into it so much and you realize, no, that wasn't what I wanted to say, but let's run with it anyway, because this actually made a more exciting and better story, because sometimes you mess up and you don't say what you thought you were gonna say, and that could happen in your character as well. So let's just go for it.
I agree. I think that's the best parts of being a GM as well, when the players like challenge you and you have to, you know, if it's your player or if it's the dice that challenges you, and you have to think on the spot to like figure out what happens now. And like I told this story before on different occasions when we played the Tomb of Horrors, and this is, I think, one of the moments that I cherish the most. Well, first of all, like Tomb of Horrors is a terrible module. but it's fun though. It's if you know what you're getting into,
Right.
and you know that it's going to be very dull, like you can have a good time. But I remember, because it's a very like GM versus the player type module, like by design. It's a what do you call it? It's not a convention module, but it's like a
Tournament.
Tournament
yeah.
module. That's the word. Yeah. But I remember when we ran it, this was the second day of running it. The first day they spent with the 10-foot poles doing the whole, playing it by the book. And without success, they barely made it out like 2 rooms. And then they realized this module is actually cheating. Like, we should do it too. We should use the rules against the GM. So that's when they learned, and they figure out like, oh, this door this says specifically no magic can, open it. You have to find the correct key. And they're like, yeah, but we have move earth. We just move the earth around the door. We dig a tunnel. And as a GM, I'm like, yeah, I can't deny that.
Right.
It's sure.
Right.
And so that's sort of creative, like outside the box thinking. I love that. Whenever my players make me have to sit down for a bit and just go, oh, I wonder, like, oh, you did what? Like, that's the best moments when I have to say I have to take like 10 minutes just to think about this.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, a lot of those are my favorite moments too. We like to call it GM buffering time. It's like I need to buffer. I need to like take a minute. Just give me a second.
Need to figure out what this implies and
right.
what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when you have to like Google physics and stuff, like to figure out like how does this work? Can this work? Like how the volume and the whatever. So.
Thankfully, I often play with an astrophysicist. So
yeah, that's very good of you. Yeah, no, we don't have those. My group.
I mean, that would make that question easier. It's be like, would this work? It's
usually no.
Yeah, generally that's the response. Yeah, it's like, no, this won't work. No. What would be the thing that you think would draw people to the game the most? You know what I mean? Like, is there any aspect that you think that people would latch onto in general?
I mean, for me, I created it because I thought that most of the other cyberpunk games out there was too much focus on rules, too much focus on the fact that you can't just have a shotgun. You have to have 10 different kinds of shotgun with like one gives +1 here and -1 there, or only have 4 shots in a mag or whatever. And it's like tiny differences, and then you need to keep track of all of that. I wanted to make something that is easy and that you can just run with, and you can learn in a day. You don't have to spend a lot of time reading and trying to figure out what's the best combo or figure out how hacking works, and have to spend have your hacker be pretty much sitting and waiting for that player's turn to make play an entire different minigame than everyone else. And Cyborg is rules light, and there are all sorts of other things lore-wise with weird tech and so on. But if you don't like that, you can just throw that out, and then the game is still there, and you can run it, and you can get an old school cyberpunk feel from the game as well if you want to. I don't understand why cyberpunk and often science fiction makes everyone dig deep into rule details all the time, and it kind of makes me sad because there's a lot of really rules light and awesome fantasy games, but whenever someone says cyberpunk, you suddenly have to turn it into lists and lists and lists of gear and rules, and every piece of gear have a different rule. So I think that's the big thing for me.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I did notice, having come from like playing Shadowrun, like I said, was that there was the real world rules, and then there was the like hacking, the whatever it was called, like the net or the matrix or something. I don't remember what the name was for it. But yeah, and then it was like this whole separate set of rules that were just like, their own game, like you were saying.
There's like 2 games. And I think that's because the way we do the net in Cyborg is that it's intertwined in the real world. Like, it's pretty much the same thing. You can dive deeper and you usually require apps or like a downtime activity for that. But the net is mostly like augmented reality and virtual reality, like layered on top of the real. So, which I think makes it interesting as well, because you as a citizen or a person inside, you're not ever sure of what is real and what is not. It's just a mix, and maybe probably you don't care. Like it's been this way so long, so who cares if that road sign is physical or not? Like it's just there. You have 10 different pop-up ads coming up at the same time, and you have a message from your loan shark asking you where the money is. So, but it's I think it paints a certain picture of the setting, which I find appealing and unique in a way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was what you were saying about the augmented reality made me think of this. The way I ended up starting off our game was I had them all in a nightclub because I was like, it's the cyberpunk version of a tavern, right?
Definitely, yeah.
But so I was like describing the music and people are dancing and yada yada, and then all of a sudden I had it stop where like all they see is people dancing, but they don't hear the music anymore and they don't see the lights because it was a free trial for like the music and the lights.
Yeah.
So they had to actually pay to get a subscription for the nightclub. And I just thought it was interesting, like being in public with other people, but like you're not really in the same place as them because of the augmented reality. No. But but that's one of the things I think is cool about the setting is that it lends itself to like a weird idea like that, and it fits, at that point.
Yeah, and it works. And it's like, if you want to add something, just ask yourself, like, how can this cost money? Or like, how can this be,
exactly
freemium or, pay to win?
How can I monetize this the most?
Yeah, always. And like super directed ads to you in your, current situation. Like I heard an actual play podcast that had like a car chase ended up in a crash, and like, as they were crawling out of the vehicle, wreckage, they got like pop-up ads like, oh, you need a repair, or, you have discount repair shops, or, just nod to, say yes. So
do you need new tires for your car?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're drone delivered directly to you buy 5 for 4.
Right.
Have a happy accident. Yeah.
Have a happy accident. Exactly. Custom branded tires,
I mean, that even gets back to like the death rules you were talking about, where it's like, what was it? It was like you have to have like 1,000 credits or something like that, and then like each extra point into the negatives is another like zero added on.
Yeah,
because at first I was like, oh, it's 2,003. No, it's like 110.
Crazy expensive. Yeah.
Yeah,
because it's reserved for really rich people. Like
of course,
you're not supposed to afford it. It's just there. It's there to tell you like this is not for you.
And if you ever have a problem with your PCs getting too much creds, well, just knock them down a few HP below 0, and they will not have that problem anymore. And
if they get too rich,
exactly. I mean, that's
Oh man, that's a good tip. I'll remember that one.
Sorry, players.
They're used to it. So I was kind of curious. Like I know that there's more coming out from Merkborg, like in the icon stuff and whatever. I was kind of curious. Is there anything in the pipeline for Cyborg specifically that's on its way, or anything you can maybe or not talk about?
I mean, we can talk about the fact that we have released 2 pamphlet adventures. Do you have them there?
No, I have it because I'm prepping my game right now. So yeah.
So we did release those, and we have more on the way, and there are some smaller stuff coming to somewhere pretty soon. And then there are more stuff being written and worked on right now, pretty much.
Right.
And there are even more things that are like ready for playtest and everything. But
cool.
we can't say much.
Can't talk about it yet.
It's not like because we have decided that we should announce it on a specific date. It's just that we haven't really decided the format and exactly what it's gonna be yet. So
like we literally don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah. So we need to get that going. And then we can announce it and then hopefully release it. But there are more things to come for Cyborg. Absolutely.
Awesome. And that was why I asked the question, was because I figured at least if there's something, at least a teaser that there is something was something.
Yeah.
So yeah,
definitely.
So what about like individually? Is there anything you guys that are working on that might not be Cyborg related that you can talk about?
I can say that I've been working on, Mörkborg is constantly in my life, and I've just finished a book that we haven't announced yet. I've just sent, not to the printer, but I've sent to whoever will take it to the printer next. So we will hopefully announce that soonish. I've been talking about this product for a long time, but it's getting real close to finishing now. And so that's coming, and I don't know, the thing that Christian mentioned, a small thing with Cyborg stuff and other stuff might be coming soon. Yeah, and we're going to a bunch of cons as well.
Oh yeah,
that's happening.
Are you guys planning on going to Gen Con this year? I think you were there last year, if I remember.
We are, yeah. That's the plan, to come to Gen Con.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be there too. So if I see you around there, then
Awesome.
But yeah, that'll be cool. Can you tell people where they could get the game Cyborg if they don't have it already?
Yeah, sure. The best way is probably get it through. First of all, ask your local friendly gaming shop if they have it. Free League is distributing the game and so on. So, if they have other Free League games, they can get a hold of Cyborg as well. That's the preferred way for us to support your local store. Otherwise, Free League website is the best bet.
Yep.
Great. All right. Thank you guys. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.